Hi everyone. So before I get into the details of this video, a disclaimer. And I think it's really unfortunate that I have to make this disclaimer, but the last time I talked about anything to do with the pandemic or masks, or the conspiracy theories around that, or vaccines or anything like that, I actually got a warning from YouTube. Now, in that video, I wasn't putting anything out that wasn't already in medical circles or against official advice or anything like that. So that made me think that's pretty censorious. So YouTube admins, monitors, if you're watching this, I am not advocating anything. I'm simply raising questions and ideas. And I think if this video was to be censored, it would be a disgrace. It would be an attack on freedom of expression. And I think it's a pity I have to make that disclaimer, but it seems to be on this issue I do. As it stands, those videos are postulating ideas that go against official medical advice have a little disclaimer. I think that probably is enough, but I am not for censoring people just because it's deemed to be against the mainstream. Um, and I don't consider myself a conspiracy theorist. In fact, I take issue with that, as I've made pretty clear in other videos. I think sometimes people could go down a rabbit hole and end up in a very dystopian worldview. But that's not for the wider subjects around that. It's more for the specific issue. So hopefully that disclaimer is enough. Again, YouTube, I am not promoting any particular viewpoint here. I'm just raising questions. I'm just raising ideas. I'm not saying um, that any piece of research is definitely right or definitely wrong or anything like that. I am voicing my opinion, but that's it. So this report is from the Daily Mirror. It's actually from August the 16th, so it's just over a month ago, but it's been updated today. I guess that's the poll has been updated. It's from the Daily Mirror, and the question is, should face masks be reintroduced in public places as COVID cases rise? Vote on our poll. Now, the poll results, you actually have to sign up to see the results. It was a little bit suspicious to me because it was over 60% say yes, they should be reintroduced. Yet the comments contradict that. They are more of the opinion that no, absolutely shouldn't. So I don't know if it's a Daily Mirror tinkering with results or that sounds a bit, conspiratorial itself, I guess, but I was surprised by that result. So I'm going to read out the report. The report is by Paul Spade and Freya Hodgson, who are online reporters. With the UK being declared a hotspot for cases of new COVID mutation Hirola, that must be the name of the latest one, experts are urging people to wear face coverings in indoor public places again. Do you agree? This is the report, I'm just quoting it. Experts have urged people to start wearing face coverings in indoor public places once again, as well as covering their mouths when coughing near others. Well, that latter part to me is just common sense and good manners. I mean, I don't like people coughing near me. That is obviously just common sense. The latest COVID variant, Pirola, was first spotted in August with 54 reported cases in the UK as of September the 18th, of which 48 were in England. Now public health officials have brought forward an autumn boosters drive to make sure as many vulnerable people are as up to date as possible with their jabs. Symptoms of the variant, officially titled 2.86, have so far been listed as a high fever, cough, blocked or running nose, loss of taste or smell, headaches, muscle aches, and fatigue. I should just say, recently I had flu and I had a little bit of loss of taste, so I wondered was that some sort of strain, but it wasn't. And my parents, who are in their 60s, both tested for COVID and they were cleared. So doctors on Friday confirmed that tests showed no evidence the mutation is any more contagious or deadly than other strains. But moving into the colder months and with schools heading back from the holidays, the number of bugs spreading will head into overdrive, hence the call to reintroduce face coverings. One expert has warned that the substrain, currently known as BA.6, I think there's a point there, is showing an alarming tendency to mutate, leaving many of her peers concerned. Dr. Tricia Greenhalgh, that's Halgh, a primary healthcare expert at the University of Oxford, shared on Twitter, "My various science WhatsApp groups are buzzing, genetic lineage clips and diagrams flying back and forth. I understand little of the detail, but it looks like once again it's time to mask up," she puts in block capitals. Meanwhile, Professor Christina Padgel, a mathematician from University College London, who's a sitting member of the Independent Sage Group, that's Block Capitals, has shared her thoughts on the future of the disease on social media. The expert highlighted that the variant has a lot of new mutations that makes it very different to previous Omicron strains. She added that this meant it was potentially more able to cause a big wave. Writing in an opinion piece in the British Medical Journal, she claimed to be reasonably certain that we have entered another COVID-19 wave, though stressed it was unlikely that this wave will cause a large surge in hospital admissions or deaths because of the UK's high rate of vaccinations. Now that to me is significant. If even she is admitting that it's unlikely to cause a large surge in hospital admissions or deaths, does that justify the same measures that were in place when the pandemic was underway 2 years ago? The main pandemic. The expert said that since the start of July, daily hospital admissions have been increasing and have more than doubled as of August the 4th compared to a month earlier, adding the number of patients in hospital primarily because of COVID has also increased. The legal requirement to wear face coverings ended on January the 27th, 2022, so well over a year ago, almost 2 years ago, and there is currently no official guidance to wear the masks in the UK. But do you think masks should be reintroduced in public places? Well, what do you think? Let me know in my comments section what you think of that. Should they be reintroduced? Should they be mandated? I've got one of my masks left over and I'm just going to wear it right now to talk about this. Now, I don't know if you can hear me clearly. That's maybe a little bit muffled. This mask is reasonably comfortable. I've had other ones that were scratchy, uncomfortable. This one isn't too bad. It's kind of uh, like a cotton type. It's just a basic mask. It's not like the super strength masks, but it's a cotton sort of material. Um, I'll just say right now, no, I'm absolutely against masks being mandated again, and the reason is this: during the pandemic, I wore my mask, partly because it was legally obliged, but also I felt it was an exceptional situation. You know, it was basically a once in a century type pandemic. Not since the Spanish influenza of 1918 had there been that sort of rate of deaths. So I don't regret doing that. I don't think it was bad guidelines at the time. I don't think that some degree of restrictions were wrong. But here's the thing: the government, the Johnson administration, said at that time this was an exceptional situation, and if people, do their part, if they get vaccinated, if they wear the masks, they abide by all the restrictions that were in place, then collectively we would come out of it. Then in January 22, that's precisely what happened. Now, since then, a lot of things have happened. We found that there has been very mixed results and research into actually how efficient masks are. You know, depending on what source you look at, some will say they're very effective, some will say there's little evidence that they are effective. So, as a mandate, that's questionable. Also, I don't think the government will risk mandating this after the anger over all the revelations about parties. I don't think that's a trivial thing, unless you're a Boris Johnson supporter, because it's a question of, those who make the rules not following them. I don't think that's a small matter. And I think there was a real arrogance with the Conservative Party. The current Prime Minister wasn't innocent either. Sunak was violated some of those guidelines as well. I believe he got a fine on one occasion. But I don't think the government will risk imposing this again. I think they know that the British public had a lot of patience. We listened to the guidelines, most of us did, and then we were told, okay, this will come out of this. Now, with all due respect to these experts, they're looking at it from a purely medical point of view. They're not looking at it from the effects on the economy. They're not looking at it from the effects on, frankly, mental health. I don't like masks. I find them uncomfortable personally, and a lot of people do. But I don't have any problems with asthma. I'm not a survivor of sexual assault. People in those positions have very good reason not to want to wear masks. For me, it's an inconvenience and it's uncomfortable. For them, it's definitely, it can cause a great deal of anxiety. That's not a trivial matter, and it angers me that sometimes medical experts have this kind of um, looking down approach of, well, we're the experts, people should just listen to us. But like I say, they're focusing on the medical side of things, which is legitimate. But in the end of the day, civil liberties is not a trivial thing. And I don't think mandated mask wearing, is normal. I think it was necessary during the pandemic. Some can disagree with that, but that was an exceptional situation. The idea that this should be normalized and we should just wear masks with no end in sight, this is not normal. Okay, I know that in some parts of East Asia and Southeast Asia, where there's high rates of pollution, people have long worn masks. But in Western society, it is not normal. It's not a way we communicate with each other. It's not a way. It's just not a normal thing. So the sight of people wearing masks everywhere was exceptional, and it was under the understanding that it would be a one-off. That once this is over, once we're vaccinated, we'll be out of it. Well, I'm triple vaccinated. Um, I feel I've played my part. This idea that forcing people to wear this for what may well be seasonal flu, it's I think it is actually quite sinister. I think the idea of having no end in sight to force masks every time there's a new strain just strikes me as dystopian. And I'm not saying that there's some conspiracy by big medical groups or something. I'm not going to get into that territory because I just don't know enough about it to say that's the case. Um, and I'm not one of these people that says, "Oh, I'm fine if I never vaccinate myself." In fact, I have a big problem with the. I think anti-vaxxers are selfish, but that's my opinion. But I think that mandating something like this again would not go down well with the public. I think the majority of people would be against it. Now, if someone is vulnerable, if they're an older person, if they had COVID, if there's situations where they may feel more comfortable with wearing a mask, I say they've got every right to do so. But mandating this for the wider public, risking, people risking fines if they don't wear masks on public transport, for example, I think that would be outrageous, given what we've been through in this country and around the world. You know, Civil liberty is not a trivial thing. And forcing someone to wear a face covering, I do believe, is borderline breach of civil liberty. During the pandemic, it may have been necessary, but now to say, let's bring this in because there's a new strain that hasn't killed anyone yet. Now, if you start getting a situation where thousands and thousands of people start dying, like you had with COVID-19, maybe there may be justification for it as an absolute last resort. But the fact of the matter is, there is mixed results on this. There is no, definitive scientific consensus saying that masks definitely stop disease. I think some things are common sense. Washing your hands, covering your mouth after coughing or during coughing, I should say. That's just good manners, right? And obviously, if you don't, then there's a higher chance of bugs spreading around. But that to me is just common sense. So let me know your thoughts. I feel very uneasy about this being mandated again. I don't think the government will do it actually. The Labour Party I'm not so sure about. I do think there has always been a big statism about the Labour Party. It's one area I don't entirely trust them. And I do wonder, is this something, if this sort of escalates, will Starmer and his party then say, we will mandate this? And I think politically that would be a very bad idea. I think it would cost some votes. But the worst thing would be if they say they won't, then they get into power and then they do. I think public anger will be very, very strong in that situation because it will no longer be about, well, this is a means of, protecting the public or reducing pressure on the NHS. The thing about reducing pressure on the NHS, again, the government information was get vaccinated, it reduces pressure on the NHS. So there's a lot of contradictory messages. There is. And I think most people are responsible citizens. I think most people try to do the right thing. But people can only be so patient. In the end of the day, forcing people to do things that are not natural, like mask wearing, it is, I feel, potentially an attack on civil liberties. I say potentially because I don't want to be too alarmist. I don't want to be too, um, you know, I don't want to be too alarmist in the narrative. But I don't see the government doing it. But these experts, do they consider the mental health effect? If you have a family living in a tower block, for example, the increase in domestic violence cases when people, I mean, forcing people to wear masks is one thing. At what point are they going to start saying, well, we should have another lockdown? Lockdown is even more controversial. I wouldn't put it past some of them to be itching for that, quite frankly. I do think, I will say this, I do think there are some people in the medical profession, some medical experts, that do live a bit in a bubble, in the sense that I'm not talking about the information they have on viruses. I'm talking about like what they understand about public perception, public optics, civil liberty. Quite frankly, it's fine for them to say we have this information, so we demand the government, basically forces people to wear masks again or gets into lockdown. But they're not considering the effect on ordinary people. They're not. And I have a problem with that. I think it's arrogant and tone deaf. Um, Maybe they've got good intentions, but they need to understand the optics of that. Um, I really hope YouTube doesn't censor this. It would be a disgrace if they do. I'm not contradicting any medical information here. I'm just saying that there's mixed results. That's a fact. There is. And I'm saying that I personally feel it is an attack on civil liberties, or potentially, if it was to be mandated. Let me know your thoughts.